So from what you learnt and from the profiles, from the nutritionist, I mean, you did an enormous amount of studying yourself, didn't you, on bringing down the levels of antidepressants and the antipsychotics, and you came up with an idea, a formula to bring Carolyn gradually off those. Can you tell us a bit about that, Malcolm?
Yeah, I think firstly we'd started bringing down the antipsychotic, and again the consultant said, well, do one and then the other. And then when we identified this bacterial infection and we went to the GP to see what he could do in terms of trying to help us identify the problem, because the consultant just said, well, everybody's got bacteria. And because he'd never seen the test before, he didn't even look at it. It was like he couldn't understand it. The GP was actually quite interested by it, and when I mentioned the level of drugs that Carolyn was taking, he raised an eyebrow. Now, I'd determined at that time that we were going to come off these tablets, and I had already started reducing them, but when he raised the eyebrow, it actually gave me extra encouragement to come off more quickly. Because GPs are used to prescribing relatively low levels of medication. When people become really ill, they go see a consultant psychiatrist, and he's used to prescribing medication at the top end. Because if people are only mildly ill on low levels, they don't need to see him. It's almost like psychologically, he's used to giving high levels of medication. When I started looking at the medication information, it was really to understand how best to come off it, because I'd heard stories about people on tranquilizers having a lot of difficulty coming off these tablets. So I went onto the internet and I found a lot of, some interesting chat sites where people were exchanging information about coming off venlafaxine, where clearly people did struggle to come off it. And I also, when I started looking at the basic drug information, I did discover an interesting thing, and that is that for venlafaxine that Carolyn was taking, it comes in two forms. There's a capsule form called XL, which is a long-lasting form, and there's a tablet form, which is relatively short-lasting inside the body. So the short-lasting one is like it has like a sugar lump effect. You take it, and within 8 hours, it's gone. And the capsule is what I call a gobstopper effect, and you take it and it just hangs around there for a long time. So it's not dissipated. But the impact of the longer-lasting drug is that it accumulates in the body.
So one of the ones that Carolyn was on had a 4 to 5 day life, didn't it, in the system?
The venlafaxine has a half-life of 24 hours, and that means that 24 hours after taking the capsule, half of it is left, and then half of what's left is left another 24 hours on. So if you take one capsule, or at any time, you've got the capsule you've just taken, you've half a capsule that you may have taken a day ago, and then a quarter of a capsule you've taken 2 days ago, and then an eighth of a capsule you took 3 days ago.
So at any one point, as you build up these levels, that you can build up incredibly high levels of the drugs without even realizing it.
It can build up significantly. In fact, Carolyn was on 2 capsules a day every 12 hours. So Carolyn was taking a capsule of 150 milligrams, but the equilibrium concentration is 480 milligrams, which is over 3 times the dose. In fact, there are others. For example, Prozac has got a long half-life of 8 days, so that builds up quite significantly. And interestingly, on the website for Prozac, it actually says that for 7% of people, they can't metabolize Prozac. So that just carries on increasing and increasing and increasing. And where the consultants look for a response from a medication, they only look for a positive response in terms of getting rid of the depression. So if they give you a tablet and they don't see it working, they're likely to give you a bit more instead of looking to see what else is happening. And although the Prozac website does say that for 7% of people they can't metabolize it, so beware and watch out for these 7%. On the venlafaxine site, for example, there's no information about whether people fail to metabolize it. But clearly, the rate of metabolization depends on what you're eating, what you're drinking with it, how much exercise you have, and all these other things. and for some people it could be longer.
And
or
your own
shorter.
body's ability, or otherwise, to actually absorb that
chemical.
particular drug. Yeah.
That's right. And what we found was that really, around the time when we were seeing the nutritionist, and we were getting some encouragement from you to come off the tablets, and she was saying, well, I think there's something wrong here. I made this discovery about the different types of venlafaxine and the way that the XL can build in the body and the way the other one is relatively quickly dispersed. And I realized why we'd had some of the problems we'd had, that back 3 months before, when we were coming off the antipsychotic, we had a really, really difficult 2 weeks. Really difficult, when Carolyn felt completely under the weather, almost like she just had flu, she just had no energy, it was achy, no motivation. And it was because the consultant had failed to put XL on the end of the prescription. So we'd gone to the tablet form, which meant immediately we'd come down in the body concentration reduced by more than half. And we didn't know it. We were on withdrawal without knowing it. And then at the time when we were seeing you, he just put XL on the prescription. And I'd said to him, why have you done it? He said, oh, it just gives a more stable body dose. And it was after that time that I realized that, in fact, the nausea was suffered from toxic overload, because we'd suddenly gone from this 230 milligrams equilibrium concentration to 480. So we'd nearly doubled the dose in a few days. And Carolyn just couldn't take it. She couldn't handle it. It just made her sick.
Yeah, that was quite a turning point, wasn't it?
It was, because it made me say, look, we're going to come off this. We need to, understanding the medication was making her ill. It really came home. The medication then was clearly making her ill, regardless of whether it was making the depression worse or not. So I decided, looking at the information on the internet about how to come off it, there was some interesting information that some people substitute the venlafaxine and other antidepressants with Prozac, because Prozac has a long half-life. So if you start taking the Prozac instead of the other antidepressants, the decay on Prozac is quite slow. So you can start taking that, and then that can help you come off it. But I decided,
keeps you at a more stable level, doesn't it?
Well, it controls the rate of decay.
Yeah.
So you can start taking Prozac and then knock a tablet off one every 4 or 5 days, and bring it down and reduce the frequency, or increase the frequency at which you're not taking it. And you can bring down the level gently at the rate at which the body doesn't suffer from withdrawal. But seeing this problem of metabolization of Prozac, I decided it wasn't worth the risk of learning about a new drug in Carolyn's body. So I knew that I could model, I suppose mathematically, but in simple terms, I could get the same reduction in the rate of drug in the body by just adjusting the rate at which we were taking this drug. So what I did was I started increasing the period between these big capsules. We were taking 250 milligram capsules a day, and so what I did was I increased it to instead of 12 hours to 18 hours between the capsules. And that was, in fact, we came down quite quickly because we wanted to have a quick effect. And when you're taking high levels, you can actually make larger reductions without seeing too big an impact. But we did see Carolyn going into a bit of withdrawal, and then we held it. So by increasing the frequency, even though it might mean getting up in the night, so you can go from every 12 hours to every 15 hours, or then every 18 hours, and then 23 hours, and then 24 hours, and go back to normal one a day. By increasing that frequency between tablets, you can bring yourself down more gently than by just stop taking one. Because if you just go from 1 capsule a day, from 2 capsules a day to 1 a day, then people get into withdrawal, and that immediately initiates an extra problem. And the tendency then is to say the patient isn't well enough to handle this low level, let's put the drug back. But what you're seeing isn't the inability of the patient to operate at a low level, it's just a withdrawal from that type of medication.